Cop taunts grieving black widower with PTSD, then learns he's prosecuted people like him for years. The air crackled with unspoken violence as Marcus Reed stood trembling in the alley, his wife's obituary crumpled in his fist. He hadn't slept in days, haunted by her death and the war flashbacks that clawed at his mind. Officer Daniel Holt, badge gleaming under the streetlight, smirked as he leaned closer, his voice dripping with malice. "You people always play the victim, don't you?" he sneered, tapping his baton against his palm. Marcus's chest tightened, the weight of loss and rage threatening to snap him in two. This wasn't just an insult, it was a spark in a powder keg, and Marcus was no stranger to fighting back. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had buried Aisha, his wife of 15 years, killed in a hit-and-run the police barely investigated. Her laughter still echoed in his nightmares, tangled with the screams of his tours in Afghanistan. Diagnosed with PTSD, Marcus carried his trauma like a second skin, but he'd built a life as a civil rights attorney, prosecuting cops who abused their power. He'd faced men like Holt before, cops who saw his blackness as a target, not a person. But tonight, grief had stripped him raw, and Holt's taunts were a blade twisting in an open wound. The alley was a dead end, hemmed in by brick walls scrawled with faded graffiti. A wooden crate nearby held a sign in bold, handwritten letters, "Justice Fights Back." It was a relic from a protest Marcus had led years ago, a reminder of his victories in courtrooms where he'd dismantled corrupt officers. Holt, oblivious to Marcus's history, kept pushing. "What's wrong, tough guy? Gonna cry for your wife now?" His laugh was sharp, meant to cut. Marcus's hands shook, not from fear, but from the effort to hold back the storm inside him. He'd seen this script before, cops baiting black men, hoping for a reaction to justify their violence. But Marcus wasn't just any man. He'd spent years studying law, turning his pain into precision. He'd prosecuted officers for brutality, exposed their lies under oath, and won justice for families like his own. Holt's badge didn't scare him, it was a challenge. Yet tonight, grief made him vulnerable, and Holt sensed it like a predator circling wounded prey. "Why don't you do something?" Holt pressed, stepping closer, his baton now inches from Marcus's chest. The alley seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the tension spiked. Marcus's mind flashed to Aisha's smile, her voice urging him to stay strong. He could almost hear her. "Don't let him win, Marcus. You're bigger than this." But the flashbacks hit harder: gunfire, sand, blood, and for a moment, he was back in the war, not the alley. His breathing hitched, and Holt's smirk widened, mistaking it for weakness. "You're nothing," Holt spat, his voice low and venomous. "Just another thug who thinks he's special." The words were a match to gasoline. Marcus's eyes snapped up, locking onto Holt's. Something shifted, a spark of defiance reigniting. He straightened, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he said, his tone cold, cutting through the night air. Holt faltered, caught off guard by the sudden steel in Marcus's voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" he snapped, but his confidence wavered. Marcus took a step forward, his grief channeling into something sharper, something dangerous. "I'm Marcus Reed," he said, each word deliberate. "I've put cops like you behind bars for years. You think you're untouchable? I've got your number." The alley fell silent, the weight of Marcus's words hanging heavy. Holt's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of unease. He didn't know Marcus's name, but he'd heard of the attorney who'd taken down officers in court, leaving careers in ruins. Marcus saw the recognition dawn in Holt's eyes, and for the first time, the officer took a step back. The power dynamic shifted, the predator now unsure of his prey. Marcus didn't raise his voice or his fists. He didn't need to. His weapon was his mind, honed by years of fighting systemic rot. "You targeted me because of my skin," he said, his voice low but unyielding. "You thought I was weak because I'm grieving. But I see you, Officer Holt. I know you're kind, and I'll make sure the world sees you too." Holt's hand twitched toward his holster, but he stopped short. Marcus's gaze held him, unblinking, a man who'd faced worse than a badge and lived to tell. The officer muttered something under his breath, then turned and walked away, his boots echoing in the empty alley. Marcus stood still, his heart pounding, the obituary still clutched in his hand. He wasn't whole, not yet. Aisha's loss was a wound that might never heal, and the PTSD would stalk him for years. But in that moment, Marcus felt a flicker of strength. He'd stood his ground, not with violence, but with the truth of who he was. The sign on the crate "Justice Fights Back" wasn't just a slogan. It was his life's work, his promise to Aisha, to himself, to every family broken by men like Holt. As the streetlight flickered above, Marcus turned and walked out of the alley, his step steady. He wasn't just a widower or a veteran or a black man in a world that too often hated him. He was a fighter, and he'd keep fighting, one case at a time, until justice wasn't just a sign on a crate but a reality for all. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.